Hello everyone, welcome to City Skylines Unmodded gameplay. Have you ever come across situations where as you expand your city and build new neighborhoods, it starts becoming more and more monotonous or maybe a little less organic? Or have you built a few large neighborhoods and then realized that maybe you didn't think about how the overall tile will look like and maybe you could have planned things a little bit differently? To help with this, in this episode I'm going to show you how to plan an entire tile while thinking about and planning certain things beforehand, as well as keeping things as organic as possible. Now, at its core, the main goal here obviously is to grow the city, which really means we'll need to look at two things. One, where exactly can we grow the city? And two, who exactly can occupy this new part of the city? Which in other words really means what can we zone in this new part of the city. I'll start with the second one first. To figure out the zoning, first thing we'll do is look at the demand. Right now it's mostly balanced, but with a slight inclination towards industrial. Now we already have a good amount of space for industrial in Crest Sawmill, so perhaps we can add more buildings and get some more people to work here. Looking at the performance, we are making some profit, so I think we can get a little crazy with adding new buildings, which for now would be more extractors. We do have one processor, the sawmill, which right now is facing some shortage of raw materials, but this will be fixed automatically in a little bit because of these newly added extractors. I do want to add more processors, and I'll also add some more storage, following a suggestion from one of the comments in the previous episode, but we'll get to that slightly later in this episode. For now, let's get back to our to-do list. So since we have enough space for our industrial for now, we should be focusing mainly on residential and commercial for the next tile, which means we already have an answer for point number 2. This brings us to point number 1, which is where can we grow the city? Now based on point number 2, we know that we should focus on a tile that is not heavy with any specific resource, so that we can have good space for building more homes and shops as opposed to more industry. Now we obviously have some resources in all of the available 6 tiles. These two have forests, this one has some oil, this has a lake and a mountain, which would be interesting but not as efficient with space for now. And then both of these have farmlands, but this one obviously is much larger and more rich with resources, which means I'll be setting up my farm industry over there in the future. And that leaves us with this one, which means these farmlands are going to be sacrificed. We might zone a few small farmlands if we really wanted to, but we'll be prioritizing residential and commercial first. So I'm just going to do that right away. Let's purchase this, and now that we have that, that's perfect. Alright, so let's get started with this. I'm just going to quickly see, yeah, we are making some good profit here, so that's good. Now my starting point here is obviously the highway. We have one connection here and another one over here. We are not going to consider this for now. So we really should be having one more connection kind of in the middle of these two. And I think somewhere over here would be a good spot for that. And I know I mentioned earlier that I want to take this road forward and connect it with the highway and kind of use that as my primary connection to get into all of these neighborhoods. But I'm kind of second guessing that, because if we really have just one connection over here to get into everything, then this road might really get overloaded. Which really means we might need some kind of arterial road that's a little bit more balanced and high capacity, and also have a really strategic location. In which case I was thinking that if we can have a connection that goes from here to here and then kind of spreads out into these neighborhoods, I think that would be a little bit better. So I'll be using that as my anchor point and kind of plan everything around that. So to start with, I'll lay out some basic dirt roads just to visualize what the tile can look like. I'll keep editing these roads to make them a little more structured while also retaining their organicness. We also don't want to follow some of these existing grids, while at the same time making sure they blend in with our existing planning fairly well. So I suppose it's a good balancing act between different aspects of city planning. And like I mentioned in episode 8, I am using what's around me as guidelines, although none of these would be set in stone really. We might keep modifying them as we grow, but this will give us a basic structure of what the tile could eventually end up looking like. And I also started defining my districts, which could also be a helpful tool in planning things well. We haven't been using districts and policies so far, but going forward, this is something we should definitely be using more. And at this point, I can also start roughly assigning zones to these districts. So as you can see, I am adding R's and C's to the district names, referring to residential and commercial. This would allow us to separate different kinds of zones evenly within the tile, helping us maintain some level of balance. Unlike what we did with our first tile, which is quite heavy with residential, and that too only in a specific side of the city. Of course, this doesn't mean we'll have entire districts with only a single kind of zoning, but rather it shows the more dominant kind of zoning for any district. And just like roads, this is not set in stone, so we'll modify it as we go. I've also started defining districts on what we have built so far, so going forward we might experiment with policies for them as well. Anyway, so this is what I have so far. We will be making an interchange here to connect the tile with the highway. And along the lower part of the map, there will be a major junction which will help spread out the traffic coming from the highway to different parts of the city. While on the upper part of the tile, we'll have this major road that could become a continuation of this road should we choose to unlock that tile. And then both the upper and lower sections of the tile would be connected at these places, either with bridges or with underpasses. On a side note, we are starting to have some issues with our new extractors. They don't have enough buyers, so at this point we can start adding more processing and storage buildings, which will fix this issue before it gets too out of hand. So I'm going to dedicate this section of the industrial district for these buildings, mainly because they are low on resources, so they won't be useful for extractors anyway. I'll be connecting this with the new one-way road that goes all the way at the top of the district and then connects back to this roundabout. I'll then be adding some internal roads to make sure that the traffic in between these areas flow well, and I'll be stretching this zone a little bit further to cover this new part of the map into the industrial area. I'll add some more internal roads and place these buildings, and then I'll also relay out some of these extractor buildings in this part of the city as well. Alright guys, so that looks like that. We have two different kinds of storage units here. We have the small warehouse that is storing plain timber, and then we have this one, which is the warehouse yard that is storing paper. And then we have the small log yard over here that is storing logs. But you know what? I think this might be actually better off over here rather than over there, because the items from these will be mostly used by our processors over here. So this would be really good if it is closer to them. I think the only thing I'm concerned about is the traffic over here, because that intersection might be a little bit too complicated for trucks coming in from two different directions. So that would be a little bit less ideal, and that... Oh, okay, we are already at level 3, that's good. Let's just quickly check the profit that we're making over here. Yeah, I think that just increased a little bit, so that's nice. We are at a good pace. But anyway, this is not important for now. Where was I? I think I was looking at this intersection. So let me just revisit that and see you guys in a minute.
1 minute, 37 seconds later.
Alright guys, I decided to move all the processing and storage buildings in this new part of the industrial district. I don't think it was ideal to have all those trucks intersecting in those two different roads, especially because that road was quite important. So I think now it is looking quite good. Let me just go ahead and remove this as well. We don't really need that. And I think now we will be having, well, we are having some losses, but that's fine. We'll revisit this later on. For now, let's just move on. And I'm just quickly checking if we are having any other issues in the city. It doesn't seem like we do, which is good. Alright, before we move forward, I'm just going to update these roads and also these roads, because now we have an extension of that road going forward, so we can actually convert this into a larger road, like so. And that looks good. At this point, we have a lot of demand for residential, and I have this location in mind for zoning more homes, but I think I want to modify this area a little bit before I move forward. I basically want to reduce the number of junctions in this part because I want that to be a relatively peaceful location with less traffic, which is why I'm extending this road all the way here. This road will most likely become a collector's road. And lastly, I'll modify the districts accordingly. I'll also merge these two residential districts together, and that looks good for now. Alright, so now that this is sorted, let's move on to zoning our new residential area. So for this, I'm just extending one of our existing residential areas. I'm taking a lot of cues from our existing zones, like this road, which is also an extension of our existing neighborhood. And overall, I'm just making sure it blends well with what we previously had and what we are going to build now. And of course, making sure that our sims have enough pathways to walk around and making this neighborhood as walkable as possible. And then of course, zoning residential all over the neighborhood, adding some parks, and I'm actually going to mix up low and high density residential in this part of the neighborhood, just to make sure that there is some good variety in this area. Alright, so I think that looks pretty good. And at this point, our residential demand has subsided quite a lot, so that is good as well.
Meanwhile.
Alright guys, our industry has also leveled up. Let's quickly check out how we are doing with it. We are decent in terms of workers, we can surely have more, and we are not making enough profits, which we can also have more of. I'm just going to add some more extractors for now. Obviously I need to properly review this. I realize I need to fix a few things, and full disclosure, I don't understand industries as well just yet, so I'll need to learn a lot more about it. But this is not an industries episode, so we'll deal with all of that later on. For now, like I said, let's just add a few extractors. These small tree saplings might be good, so let me just add that, and I think we are good for now. Alright, so now let's get back to the task at hand, which is expanding the city in this new tile. Now obviously we won't be able to populate this entire tile right away, but I do want to start picking some portions of the tile and build small districts that are sort of disconnected from the main city. For now, I'll just pick these two areas for doing this. We have a fairly balanced demand at this point, but like I said, we'll be mixing up mainly residential and commercial, although we might make some offices, which are actually considered as industrial zones. On a different note, we can start adding monuments at this point. We are making some decent money, so might as well start getting some income from tourists, right? And also at the same time, we can make our citizens happy. So let's see what kind of options we have. We have this hypermarket, and then we have this departmental store, okay. And this is the cinema, okay. So we have a few other options, but I think for now the hypermarket might make more sense, especially considering this area we want to focus on will be mainly a commercial area. So I think it will fit the theme really well. The other area we want to focus on is this one, which is mainly going to be residential, but we'll get to that a little later. Let's talk about roads. We'll definitely want an interchange here. I think I'll also make this stretch a highway, which would make this road an arterial road, which means we don't want any of our vehicles to stop too close to this junction. This also means it would actually be better if we don't let them access buildings in this district directly from the road. Which is why I have this junction that would let them access this district, and then we'll have smaller collector and local roads inside. I'll also need to think about this part because there are too many roads coming together in a very small area, but I'll try to figure that out as I start building this. So let me get to that and see you guys in just a bit. This actually looks really weird. Alright, let me do that a little differently. I'm going to add a service road that is not accessible from the main road, and I'm going to move this over here. I think that looks much better. We do have some weird stuff happening in the terrain over here, but I think that's fine. It's at the back of the building, so it's good. So now that the zoning is done, I'm just going to add these services, and the area in between these two neighborhoods I'm going to make like so, and at a later date I'm going to add a park over there. Additionally, I'm going to add another district over there and kind of make that as an exclusive district so that can have its own policies. And in terms of policies, I'm thinking about having one specific policy, which is recreational use. This changes a few things, but our main focus is to increase tourism, which this policy is really good for. Lastly, I'm just going to rename this. It's no more a strip, it's more like a triangle, so now it is called Briarwood Triangle instead of Briarwood Strip. And resuming the simulation, it is looking good. There are people already starting to come in, which is nice. One thing I'd like to make sure is to remove these lights and make sure it's stop signs. I think I'd probably add a stop sign. Maybe not there actually. Let's remove that and add this. Let's add this one over here and one over here. This is fine. I think maybe this one would be a good idea. Yeah, that looks good. So in terms of the traffic, I think this is sorted. There won't be any issues here. Some of these buildings are actually leveling up, which is quite nice. I think we already have some basic services like firehouse, police stations and all that. But the monument actually is also affecting that quite significantly, which is good. Now we have added recreational use as one of the policies, but I think I'll also add two more policies, which are these two, big business manufacturer and small business enthusiasts. These would essentially make sure that all of the shops in this neighborhood are doubling their sales and the goods produced. This happens at a slightly increased upkeep, which I think we can totally afford at this point, so that's no problem. Overall, this is looking quite nice in my opinion, especially the monument over here. It is looking like a typical American series of shops at the edge of the highway, which is really good, which is the aesthetic that I was kind of aiming for this one. And this is basically how the rest of the road looks like here. And I think that is also turning out to be quite nice. And then we have these pathways, which will eventually become a park, but more on that later on. I think the only thing that I don't like is the slope at the back and the side of the monument, but there is not much that we can do about that. So we'll have to leave it as that. We might actually try to make it more aesthetically pleasing at a later date with pathways or trees and things like that, but I don't think there is much we can do with how City Skylines handles terrain at times, especially without mods. Alright, so now that that neighborhood is done, let's focus our attention on this one. So for this, the idea I have in mind is to make a park and surround that by high density residential, aka just tall buildings. The park would serve as this point of focus in between these buildings and would also serve as a communal space, hopefully. So that essentially would how it would look like. Let's just make sure it is connected to electricity. Let's also upgrade these roads. And I think that is looking quite nice. We have this park in the middle, and then we have all these buildings. We have a lot of buildings actually around it. And let's just turn on this park. That's making a lot of people happy, which is good. And this will also make sure that the buildings start upgrading. For this, we can also actually add services over here because this is a disconnected area from the rest of the city. So this will be good for the neighborhood. And let's also make sure we have all the lights converted into stop signs for now. Alright, so now that we have both of these neighborhoods ready and our Mulberry Park is a little disconnected from the rest of the city, we want to make sure that these neighborhoods are connected well. One way we can obviously do that is by adding public transit, but we want to make sure that there is enough demand for that. And it seems like right now there may not be that much demand because we are only seeing pedestrians that are only walking from somewhere nearby. We don't even see any private vehicles that need to go to other places from here. This pink line that you see is just city service vehicles, so there is not much that is going on. Which means I suppose we are a little bit too early for adding a public transit in this neighborhood right now, so we'll hold off on that for now. But while we are at this, let's just quickly check how many people we have in both of these neighborhoods. So this one has about 400-500 people that are living, that are residents. And then this one has about 430 workers. These are not residents, obviously, because we don't have any residential there. Either way, I think both of these neighborhoods are starting to shape up really well. And Mulberry Park would obviously be our next target because we'll need to reach that 17,000 milestone and we'll need a lot more residential zoning for that. On the other hand, Briarwood Triangle I think is fairly complete. We still have some of these buildings that need to upgrade. And like it says, we need to attract wealthier customers to upgrade it, which I don't know how to do yet, but we'll figure it out, I guess. Anyway, so I think overall this is looking quite nice. We have all these walkways that people are using quite efficiently. It's not looking as... Oh, what is that? Oh, it's a person with a dog. Okay. So it's not looking as aesthetic yet. And what's happening here? I think this is not how it's supposed to be. Let's just fix that. And let's maybe connect it like so. And let's probably add a connection like so. And also like so. Okay, I probably like to overdo this a lot, but that's okay. So this, like I was saying, it doesn't look that aesthetically pleasing yet, but I'll make sure that I'll do that probably going forward. We can also add some more connections from here, like for example, this one. Let's just switch all of this off and let's add a connection like that. I think I'll probably spend some more time in adding these connections and fixing some of these connections, and I'll see you guys in just a minute.
Meanwhile.
Okay, that was probably the first ambulance I've ever seen. I don't know what's happening. Let's just quickly check our healthcare and see. Oh yes, that's definitely a problem. This is not good. These citizens are sick. So yeah, let's just check our medical clinic. Let's make sure that they have access to it. I don't think there are that many. Let's just maybe add one over here. We probably need a lot more actually. Let's add one over here if you can find a space for that. I think this is good. What about this one? Why are we not having any medical clinics? I always thought that we did add them, but it seems like we never did. And the only medical clinics we had recently was in the recent 2 neighborhoods that we created. So that really means that we never really added a medical clinic before, which is actually quite surprising considering we never had a healthcare issue before today. Anyway, I think this should definitely fix it. Alright guys, let's get back to reviewing the public transit situation in our new neighborhood. I think we had enough time and let's just see if we have more demand now. And it seems like we do actually. Probably not that much, but we definitely have some private vehicles going back and forth, and we obviously always had pedestrians. So I think at this point we can actually add a new bus line and see what that looks like. If it is not that efficient, we can always reduce the budget of that, or we can always remove that altogether. But I am suspecting this would be quite efficient. If not now, then definitely in the future once we have more residential zoning in Mulberry Park. So let's probably start our line somewhere over here because that's where most of the people from Mulberry Park are going. So yeah, I think that would be good. We can probably add a stop over here near Briarwood Triangle, and then we can add a stop near Mulberry Park, which would be probably over here. I don't know if you want to extend it all the way over there. Probably not, because that wouldn't be that efficient. So let's put that over here, and then let's bring it back to Briarwood Triangle. So that would loop around and come back probably over here. And then continue in the same direction and stop maybe over here, and continue again and stop at the entrance of the commercial district. And what do we do with this one? Because that, I don't think we should take it inside. That would be a disaster with all the trucks coming in. I think we can probably put it here, and then let's actually, maybe we can add a stop over here instead. We don't want all the buses to kind of converge into the same stop. Anyway, so that line is complete, and oh no, that's not what we want to do. This line is extending all the way to that road. So to fix that, let's actually add a small dirt road like so, and let's change this. Let's move this over here, and that's perfect. Okay. This will make sure that the buses don't go all the way into the wilderness. And yeah, I think we can actually move this one over here just so that it's closer to the intersection. We can also do the same thing with this one, and that looks good. So now that we have the line in place, let's just check. Okay, first of all, let's rename this to second line because it is our second line. And let's change the color to this. I'll make sure to rename this to proper names, but for now we are just rolling with this. And with that, let's reduce the count of the vehicles to 1. Or actually, you know what, maybe we can increase it to 2 because we do have enough passengers going in some of these stops, which is actually quite strange for a new line like this. Let's just see what's going on over here. Oh, we have actually a lot of people. Look at all of those people going for the bus stop. And we have a good amount of crowd just waiting for buses over here. So that's actually pretty good. This is way better than I expected it to be. So if the demand keeps rising like this, we might actually be able to replace this with a different kind of transit, maybe a monorail. But then again, this is at some point in the future, not for now. So let's move on. Also, one of the things that I realized, and also one of you pointed out, was I was using the pavement path and the bicycle path interchangeably. So I was pretty much just putting bicycle path everywhere, expecting people to use it for walking, which is not how it works, obviously. So as you can see, the bicycle path is actually used for just bikes, while the pavement path is actually used for both. Although here it says it's just accessible by pedestrians, it is definitely used by both. So let's actually get to fixing this problem. I think most of the older pedestrian paths that I made were actually bicycle paths. So I'm just going to see these. These are the newer ones, by the way. But yeah, we'll need to see where we have these. I think this one is definitely one of them. The bridge is a bicycle path for sure. So that needs to be fixed without any questions. I think this one is still fine because it still have an access for pedestrians on the edge of the road. But this one, for example, oh, there is an access here that is a bike path, so this needs to be a pavement path for sure. But yeah, so there are basically bike paths all over the place, so I'll need to fix all of that. So I'll do that and see you guys in just a bit. One of the other things I want to do is add a walking connection between these two neighborhoods because those are quite disconnected for now. The only thing I don't know is how much this will be used. So for now, we'll just make a really crude bridge that kind of connects both of these. And if we see people using it well enough, then we'll make it into a proper connection. And I think that looks good for now. Now with that, let's go back to our new neighborhood, and I think a lot of people are actually using this. So I am going to add a new bike path that goes from here straight up to the actual bus stop. That is really nice. So this would allow them to kind of get to this really quickly. And I can also actually add a pavement path alongside this while we are at this. And this drop doesn't really look that good, but I think that's fine for now. So we have this cyclist kind of coming here and stopping at the bus stop. That's exactly what we want. So that's perfect. I think this is actually really, really good for now. So with that, I think we are good with this episode. We actually achieved quite a lot of things in this one, but we still are nowhere close to 17,000, which is the next milestone. So I think that's what we'll be targeting for in the next episode. And we'll obviously keep expanding into our new tile, which is exactly what we wanted to achieve in this episode. So I am quite happy with this. I don't know if you guys are. Please let me know in the comments below and give this video a like if you really like this. And if you have any feedback or comments or suggestions for what we have made so far, please feel free to add them in the comments as well. And with that, I'll end this episode over here and see you guys in the next one. Until then, a goodbye.